Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I see a lot of people are having a good morning. A lot of folks from the West Coast. It's midday here on the East Coast. And what a big round world it is. Full of ukulele players and friends. Thank you for tuning in for a nice little hang. We're just going to hang and maybe answer some questions, or at least try to. If you have questions about the ukulele, it's never a bad time to put those in the chat. Sayara is here. She can highlight some of those questions, and I'll do my best, at least to give my opinion on them. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. Sorry about last month. Boy, has anybody else had end-to-end colds this season? Oh my goodness. You can still kind of hear it in my voice, but I'm feeling 1,000 times better. So welcome back. Thanks for joining me. And as always, the idea here is at least to start with some questions from Uketropolis, students, to see what are the hot topics in the past few weeks over at Uketropolis, and maybe that will prompt some more questions from you folks. But why don't we start with something here? Let's see. I've highlighted a few. Why don't we start with this comment? Not so much a question, but it's an interesting comment from Trey. And Trey is one of our JHUI certified teachers. He's working on, let me see, which level is he working on? I can't tell. Oh, Trey is working on level 2 now of the JHUI teacher certification program. And that program is open to anybody who just wants to take their ukulele teaching to the next level. I know that's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, like next level. What does that actually mean? I think in the context of what we're trying to do with the JHUI program, next level means tapping into 3 generations of ukulele teaching knowledge. That's really what it means, because on your own, you will eventually get to a next level, but it will take a very long time. And why not tap into the existing sort of stream of knowledge that already exists, going back to the 1960s with Chalmers Doan, coming up through the 80s and 90s with Jamie Thomas and Bonnie Smith and Peter Luongo, and so many people who were involved in moving ukulele education forward, particularly in Canada, but elsewhere as well. And then, you know, our third wave that we're part of, and all the innovations that we've discovered in terms of teaching ukulele. That's what I mean by next level. I don't mean to just sort of throw that phrase around without, you know, considering what I mean by that. So Trey is in level 2 of this program, and this is a lesson on the dominant 7 chord. And because I think it's very important to teach the dominant 7 chord to students in a thoughtful way. So before I get to his comment and the implications of that comment, what is the dominant 7 chord? And when would you introduce it to a student? I mean, I don't just mean in the formal music education context, if you're a school teacher or if you have private students, but like even if it was informal, if you were teaching your neighbor or your nephew or your niece or your grandson or granddaughter, when would you let them in on this this secret knowledge that some chords have a different function than others, and the ones that are very full of tension that need to resolve, the ones that are full of promise that need to deliver, the ones that are very insistent and need to make their point, those ones have a special name. And those are most often the dominant 7 chords. Well, jeepers. I mean, that's pretty nuanced, right? Because for a lot of people at the beginning of their musical journey, they don't hear a difference between major chords or dominant 7 chords. Many people even struggle with the distinction between a major chord and a minor chord. And I can see why. You know, it might seem obvious to folks who have been playing for a while that this and this have very different sort of personalities. But for a start, who knows what people are hearing? I mean, even with that C major to C minor, I can see how people get fooled. In fact, this happened to me just in my lesson yesterday. Some students were having trouble distinguishing one from the other. I think maybe it was because they were hearing the C note really prominently, and whatever sort of happened under that C note didn't really register. They were really hyper-focused on the highest sounding note in the chord, which, to be fair, is how our brains are wired. I mean, that's the note that we tend to focus on. We are trained, we are bred, we are built to hyper-focus on the highest sounding note in a chord, which is great. It allows us to do all sorts of things in music, but it's also can work against a beginner student. They hyper-focus on that C, and as long as the next chord also has that C, it can be very hard for them to distinguish one chord from another. So if your students are having trouble, or even if you're having trouble in your own ear training, distinguishing between a major and a minor, it's even more subtle, the difference between a major and the dominant 7. Because the dominant 7 has all the same notes as the major chord, it just has one bonus note. And that bonus note makes a world of difference. So you can see how we can sort of go down a musical rabbit hole with all this stuff. And this is why Trey is in level 2 before we're having this level of discussion. In level 1 of the teacher training, and in level 1 of ukulele in the classroom, and in level 1 of most methods that I know of, we don't have this kind of discussion. We just play. We play and 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 we play, and we just, the most important thing is immersion in the sound. Understanding what you're doing always comes later. And we call that understanding, I think we call that music theory. Chalmers Doan goes so far as to say that he wants to change the term music theory into music understanding. And in fact, he uses the term music understanding instead of the term music theory with his own students. And I think that's a really interesting point, is that aren't we really talking about music understanding? Whereas when we play and we play and we play and we play and we have fun with it and we just enjoy the sounds, we don't need to know what we're doing until such point as we have the need to know what we're doing. Music theory is very much on a need-to-know basis. And so it shouldn't be surprising that Trey is not encountering these deeper discussions about what is the dominant 7 chord, how does it function, why does it matter. These discussions do not come in the first lessons. They do not even come in the first level of this program. They probably wouldn't come in the first year of teaching a classroom. But now that students have immersed themselves, or maybe you've immersed yourself in the feeling and the sound of these chords. Now it's time to start differentiating between them. I often think of the knowledge that you have about music as being very much like the spare change jar that you might have on your bedside table. You know, when you sort of empty out your pockets at the end of the day, and you have, in the old days, you'd have some pennies and, you know, dimes and nickels and quarters. If you're in Canada, you'd have loonies and toonies, and they sort of, over time, they sort of fill up this jar in a very random order. You don't, at that point when you're emptying your pockets, you're not rolling them into rolls of, you know, 25-cent coins and 10-cent coins and 5-cent coins. You just randomly put them in the jar, and they sit on your bedside table for months, sometimes years, and you don't really know what to do with those coins. And the reality is, they are valuable. They really have value. The problem is, because they're not organized, you can't spend them. You see where I'm going with this? The analogy is the chords that you pick up along the way, the little bits of knowledge. This note goes here, that note goes there. This chord means this, and I use this chord. All this sort of random collection of knowledge that you pick up just by playing and playing and playing. Very valuable, but disorganized. So where does that put you? Well, it puts you in a place eventually where that jar is going to get filled, and you're going to have this sort of moment where you have to either organize what you know so you can make room in the jar for new ideas, or you just sort of stay at that point with this random assortment of random facts and ideas that you've picked up along the way, and with no real way to sort of move on. And I think this is one way to describe the famous sort of beginner's plateau. When that jar gets full and you can't figure out how to organize the ideas so that you can move on and fill up the jar again. Okay, I'm not going to totally run that analogy into the ground, but that's kind of how I feel for myself, and I've observed a lot of students over the years running into that point where it's filled. And that is the point where music theory or music understanding really helps. So to go back to Trey's comment, he says, you heard me describe the dominant 7 chord as more insistent than the average chord, because a dominant 7 chord wants to go somewhere. A dominant 7 chord is like, it's very similar to a major chord. It has all the same notes as a major chord. Do, mi, so. But the dominant 7 chord has one extra note. This one. And that one additional note means that it's like a major chord with direction. It has a vector. It has a purpose in life, and it has to fill that purpose. It's going somewhere, baby. The dominant 7 chord is going places. And so I've said in this lesson that Trey is watching, he said, I'm using the term, it's more insistent. And Trey says, that will definitely be added to my nomenclature when I'm teaching the dominant 7 chord. And so we have this discussion, Trey and I, on Uketropolis. I said, yes, I have always thought of chords as having very distinct personalities. And honestly, I think that I picked that up partly from my own experience, but as well, I've picked that up from this Jamie Aebersold tape that I heard when I was a kid. You know, Jamie Aebersold, the famous jazz educator. He made his name making the sort of music -1 play-along tapes, where there'd be the whole band minus your instrument, so you could play along. And this is long before internet and YouTube and tools that would do that kind of thing for you. And I remember hearing a Jamie Aebersold talk or something where he was talking about the idea of musical personalities or chord personalities. And he said the analogy he used was, you know, when you pick up the phone and it's a good friend on the other end, and your friend says hi. you know from that one syllable who it is, or maybe 2 syllables. They say, hey, how's it going? You know, hey, how's it going? 4 syllables. You can very easily tell, because of your ear training, you know what friend that is. They don't even have to say their name. Hey, it's me. You know who it is. And over time, just by being around chords and harmonies, you develop the same kind of familiarity. I thought that was a really cool idea. And sure enough, when I hear this chord, I only need 1 syllable. I know that chord is a major 7 chord. I know it's that Sandman chord. I don't need to hear 8 or 10 of them. I know just from 1 syllable. Hi, it's me. I know that one. And over time, you will develop that same kind of familiarity with all of the qualities of chord. If I play this one, well, that's that acerbic kind of a diminished 7 sound. Hey, it's me, right? All the chords have a distinct musical personality. And that's what Trey and I were talking about. As I said in my comment to him, I said, it goes to show how connected we really are, how connected we all are to timbre and tone and articulation in our everyday lives. The fact that you know who's on the other end of the phone in 1, 2, or 3 syllables, that just shows you the power of the ear and ear training. If you can pick that out in language and in tone of voice, you can pick that out in music as well. So that's an interesting discussion we've been having over at Uketropolis, and I hope that that's interesting for you as well. Maybe stimulating, maybe lead you down a new path of inquiry in your own practice. But especially if you're a teacher, understanding that music understanding comes well after music action and immersion, and that the way past that beginner's plateau may well be to organize the spare change knowledge that you have once you fill the jar. There's something for you to think about as a teacher and also as a player. Thanks, Trey, for the interesting conversation. I appreciate it. Okay, well, do we have any burning questions in the chat so far? Well, let me see. Checking. Oh, we've got one here from Sun, Wind, Water, Rain. I like your handle. That's cool. Who says, how do you minimize squeaking, that squeaking sound, when you're sliding a bar shape along the neck? That's a good question. In fact, this question came up a couple of times over the past few weeks over at Uketropolis as well, so it's right on topic. Let me think. How do I do it? You know what? It's been so long since I really dug in on this that I'm sort of, all I can say is there's a big difference in the string that you have. If you have a metal string, this is going to be a much bigger issue for you. If you have nylon strings, which I have and which I always use, I'm very old-fashioned when it comes to strings. I just like my old, clear nylon. Like, I know there are so many space-age materials that people are making strings out of these days, and they're amazing. I mean, you got the Nile gut, and you've got the fluorocarbon, and you've got titanium, and who knows what else. And I just always go back to not only the sound, but also the feel of clear nylon. I'm a very simple person. I guess I just like what I like. And one of the benefits, I guess, of that is that you don't have any wound strings. Even when I play a low G, I find a really thick nylon string and I put it on the low G so that I don't have that squeaking or that change in tone when I go onto the 4th string. And I really like sliding. Especially, I've just been working on a book with Saili Tank, which is a book of Indian ragas arranged for ukulele. And this book is coming out soon. In fact, there's going to be a free lesson from the book in the next ukulele magazine that's coming out, so we're really excited about that. And in classical Indian music, there's a lot of sliding. And if you have to deal with squeaking when you're doing those kind of quick slides, it sort of takes the fun out of it, doesn't it? So one thing, I mean, there's a few things you can do. One thing is actually consider, first of all, going with clear nylon and nothing wound, no metal strings. Another thing is you can look at like a product that is actually a solution for this. At one point in the studio, years and years ago, I was really getting bugged by the squeaking at that time, and I found a little product called Fast Fret, and it's like a soapy brush that you brush along the strings, and it creates kind of a soapy film on the strings, and your fingers just fly, up and down, almost too much, and it eliminates the sound and the friction, and you just poof. So you could look at something like that. That one, if I remember right, it was called Fast Fret. I don't use it anymore, but it worked at the time, and maybe it'll work for you. I think overall, just that delicate kind of dance of releasing the pressure just enough as you're moving. I think sometimes it's tempting to think that you need to be clamped down on the string at always at the same pressure, even as you're moving. And that's where you get squeaking and you get more damage to your fingertip, and you don't get as expressive a slide. If I clamp down and I stay clamped on that note with the same intensity and I move my finger, you can hear every single note in between. Did you hear it? Diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle, like that. That's because I'm really pushing hard as I'm sliding. And you hear every single speed bump of a fret as I go over, like that. If you're hearing every single fret all the way up as you move, then you're just pushing too hard through the slide, and you have to lighten up once the finger starts moving, and then you'll get a nice smooth movement. So you kind of feel like you're levitating through the slide, and then you come back down firmly onto the arrival note. Now, I know the question was about chords, but sometimes it's good to just start with a single string and understand what's happening, and then you can move that into your chords. I would just start practicing with a single finger. And that same idea of levitating and very light touch as you're moving, and then coming back down, firmly on the arrival position. It's tricky, but it does come with time. And it comes with not just time, because it's not like you could just put your ukulele under your pillow and hope to be better the next morning. It comes with playing and playing and playing and playing and playing some more. So I don't know if that's helpful, but those are some of my thoughts on how you minimize that squeakiness and that bumpity, 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 bump sound that you might get when you're moving between chord positions. Yeah. Okay. Let's try one more question here from Uketropolis. Let's see, what do we have? Okay, let's get into some playing and arranging here. Kapila has a great question here, and the question is, James, you make the arranging and putting the whole song together look so easy. Kapila is also working on becoming a Jehui certified teacher, and she's working on a song called All Night Long, which is a simple 2-chord song in the key of C, not the Lionel Richie All Night Long. This one goes all night long, all night long, all night long, from midnight on. If anyone asks you who wrote this song, tell them it was me, and I'll sing it all night long. Basically just a 2-chord sort of early blues tune. And if that were all that you played when you got up on stage, it would be a very short performance. It would be a very short concert. The audience would not have time to really get into the performance before it was over. And if you, as a teacher or as a player yourself, fall into the trap of just starting in the top left-hand corner of the page, playing down to the bottom right-hand corner of the page, and stopping, well, then you are never getting past first base with the music. You're never really getting beyond the starting point. Okay, so that's what Kapila is talking about. You make putting the whole song together and arranging it look so easy. As you've demonstrated in the lessons prior to this, the arrangements are fairly complex for a beginner. So how do you suggest getting the same good feeling of an entire song that is very simply arranged without having to do it so formally? Okay, I see. So a little bit of background. My favorite go-to arranging template is this. Sing, play, sing. Now, anybody can remember that. Even in the heat of the moment when you're on stage or you're in a rehearsal or you're with your class, anybody can remember. Sing, play, sing. What that means, sing, play, sing, what that means is you sing it through one time, just like I did. You start from the top left hand of the page and you go down to the bottom right hand corner of the page. That's one time through. And then you go back. And instead of singing it all, you play it on the uke. Now, ideally, this is a combination of melody and chords. If it was an ensemble, that would be easier to do. But we're playing the thing. We're not singing the same thing anymore. We are playing the thing. And then the final step, we're going to sing it again. Now, ideally, maybe you have a second verse, something that creates a little bit of variation. But basically this sort of like sing sandwich, right? Like sing, play, sing, is my go-to default arranging template for basically everything that I do, and certainly everything that I teach. So very quickly, you can get this happening. And I don't think that this is too much to ask from even a beginning group, because that playing part, the sort of meat in the sandwich, the central point there, even if I'm in a jam session with folks who are not 100% confident on the instrument, I can just get them to strum. And other people might pick the melody. Or maybe I'll pick the melody. Or let me see, what else could we do? We could even play the rhythm of the melody on a single note. Maybe that's their thin edge of the wedge as they start to explore instrumental playing. How about that? That sounds great. And it's a bona fide instrumental break. And there, they have a time through where they can just play. That's really cool. It's really powerful. Without that meat in the sandwich, a little break from the singing, your arranging options are really limited. If you don't have the ability to occasionally not sing, that's very important. For any singing group or singing performer or person who loves to sing a lot, their options are greatly enhanced if there are some times where they can figure out how not to sing. And in the case of the ukulele, that could be just strumming the chords. It could be playing a little solo variation. It could be doing a single note rendition like we just heard. But you have to have some way to get your group or yourself to not sing. It's a beautiful thing, and it really opens the possibilities. And so I'm saying to Kapila, I'm saying, as you can tell from me talking here, my favorite arranging sort of template is still sing, pick, sing. And eventually, I'm going to add on to that on either end. I'm going to add an intro and an ending. So this, we've had the sandwich, and now we're going to have the clubhouse sandwich. The clubhouse sandwich is where you start with an intro, and then you do sing, pick, sing, and then you add an ending. That's the clubhouse sandwich. And that can be done very quickly and easily with even a beginning group. I often do this with school-age groups whom I've never met. Like I'm coming in cold, I've got 35 minutes with a group. I can still get to this point. I can still get to this clubhouse sandwich. Let me show you what I might do then for this intro and ending with a group that I'm only going to see for half an hour and who's never played the song before. The intro might literally be me strumming and them getting ready and looking at me. And the intro is this. Okay, everybody, we're about to sing. Eyes on me. Look up. On the count of 3, we're going to sing. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. All night long. And then we're into it. Did you see what I did for the intro? I mean, it's actually just me warming up the room. It's sort of me creating a musical space and initiating the arrangement. It doesn't have to be more than that. Now, of course, it can be more than that. One common way of doing an introduction is to just do the last couple of chords in the piece. And everybody can do this. All night long, right? Using the last 2 chords or 3 chords in the piece, whatever sounds best, and tacking that on at the beginning. Great way of developing a simple intro, which recycles material that you've already learned. So that's a nice way to do it. The ending, in this case, for this particular song, I say to students when I'm teaching this, I say, and then we're going to do an ending. And I'm going to teach you the ending right before we play the ending. Now let's go. And I just sort of let it hang in the room that they're like, what? Like, you're not even going to tell us what the ending is before we start playing the song? No, let's go. And they think it's going to be a complete train wreck. And it's one of the ways I like to have fun with a group of students of any age, is I like to induce a little bit of panic into their lives. This is one of many, many examples of that. Telling them they're going to do something that they think is impossible. I'm going to teach you the ending during the song. about 5 seconds before we play the ending. Well, to a beginner who's just barely struggling to hang on for dear life, that sounds like an impossible task. And that's exactly what I want. I want it to sound impossible. I want them to be sweating all the way through this, worrying about the ending coming. I don't want them to be comfortable. I want them to be panicking, because I know for a fact that it's all going to work out, and that they are going to see me as the person who made it work out. And it's like having the disease and the cure. I introduce the panic, but then I also, in very short order, alleviate the panic with the solution. And the students start to not only gain confidence in themselves that they can do hard things and that they can be in stressful situations and see themselves through, which I think is very important. As the father of an 8-year-old, this is something that I'm really trying to drive home. But it also increases their confidence in me that I can help them navigate through difficult situations. And okay, maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think that's the subtext for moments like this when you're a teacher. And they're little things, but they all add up over time to a feeling of trust and confidence. Trust and confidence together do good things for students. So at the very end, if the train don't come, something's wrong on the road. Play that again. If the train don't come, something's wrong on the road. Play that again. If the train don't come, something's wrong on the road. Now put your first finger on the first fret of the first string and play it like it's the last chord you'll ever play. Thank you very much, and good night, everybody. And just like that, they've played this cool ending that they didn't know was coming. Maybe they've already played the C7 chord, but the C7 chord is a beautiful ending. It's that "and many more" kind of an ending, right, that we've all heard. They recognize that as being, you know, a piece of sort of music grammar that they've heard before. And it's the kind of chord that's very easy to call out on the fly. First finger on the first fret of the first string. Now play it like it's the last chord, right? Those kinds of phrases and that kind of language, which I have in my back pocket. I'm not inventing this on the fly. It's stuff that I've done a million times before. That allows me to have a lot of fun with these students and allows them to feel really proud of what they achieve. That it can all come together quickly, not entirely effortlessly or painlessly, because I have fallen into the trap so many times of trying to protect my students from stress and pain, trying to protect them and shelter them from every possible bit of difficulty. And I always find, I would say nearly 100% of the time, I always find that backfires. I don't know how you feel about this, but whenever I try to protect a student from something, I find, by and large, they get bored. That is the result of trying to, as Chalmers Stone says, trying to put a fence around every puddle. I'm more guilty of that than I would like to admit, but I'm learning slowly that falling on your face into a musical puddle is not the end of the world, and you do learn a lot from those situations. So for myself, I'm trying to leave more of those opportunities open. I find that students love to rise to a challenge if it's an appropriate challenge. They love to rise to that challenge. The feeling of sinking their teeth into something that is just beyond their reach, but they can grasp, is so satisfying. And I think that's true for students of all ages. So the idea of introducing a little bit of challenge, or, you know, as I put it, maybe a little too dramatically, introducing a bit of panic when you know that you can alleviate the panic in short order, that creates sort of a an educational sort of updraft as the trust and the confidence rise together. So Kapila and I, as you can tell, had an interesting discussion about this. I hope that brings you guys in on that discussion and stimulates some ideas and thoughts of your own on this topic. That all comes from arranging in terms of, which part do we play of the song to create a performance, but it also has these deeper sort of implications, psychological and social implications around learning, which I think are fascinating. So thank you, Kapila, for the interesting discussion. I appreciate it. Yeah, Joe's talking about arranging when it comes to songs from the 60s. How many of them are arranged in the same way? He says, sing it all, then do a short instrumental, and then sing some more. Partly because, as Joe's saying, radio only allowed that kind of short format, 2 to 3 minutes. I think it's fascinating how recording formats influence music, the way music is written and created. You see that now with streaming, how streaming algorithms have shaped the way people write music, how long it takes before the chorus has to come in. In the old days, you could wait a minute and a half or 2 minutes, before you hit the chorus, because hey, if a person had the record and they put it on there, they're probably going to wait 2 minutes before they hear the good part. Nowadays with streaming and sort of swipe left, swipe right kind of culture, that chorus has to hit well under a minute in. Otherwise you risk, or at least there's a perception that you risk losing the listener. I'm not sure I agree with that, but it seems to be the way we're going. Why not just start with the chorus? Why not just play the chorus 9 times over? Yeah. There you go. Done. Who needs a verse? Who needs a bridge? Just play the chorus on a loop for 24 hours. Let's see, what else do we have? Did anybody see that 24-hour-long music video that Pharrell did for Happy? It was kind of like that. Let's see. We've got one question here about clawhammer. We've got another question about strumming. Yeah. Let's see. What do we got? Well, strumming is a hot topic for all of us. Let's see if we can do a quick one here. Oh, actually, this is another question from Kapila. So let's try this. Let's see if I can do this one quickly. Kapila is asking, in this demonstration that I'm doing of this kind of like sort of 50s rock and roll strum. Kapila is asking, is that a double strum? If so, I'm confused why this is so early on in the method that she's studying, which is the ukulele in the classroom, level 1. Because is that a strum that can actually be taught for very beginner level students? And that is a really good question. What strums are appropriate for beginners? I'm curious to know actually what strums you guys start with. I mean, if you're teachers or if you're learning the ukulele for the first time, like what was the first strum that you remember learning, and what is the first strum that you try to teach somebody if you have the chance to give them a lesson? What do you do? Just throw that in the chat, because I'm really interested in your view on this, because there's not really a right answer. I mean, in the old days of the Canadian ukulele program, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the first strum that they would teach was the index finger strum with the fingernail on the way down, and then upwards with the sort of the side, or like the fleshy part of the finger. Because that seemed like a good place to start. It seemed like an exciting place to start. It's a nice rhythmic, percussive sounding strum. They work on what's a swing rhythm, a lilting rhythm, and what's a straight rhythm where all the beats are the same length. But it was all centered around the finger strum. And I love that strum. I mean, I think it's the meat and potatoes of all strumming. There's a reason why it's called the common strum, like the index finger strum. But it also presented some challenges over the years. We found that it wasn't the right fit for all students, particularly students who had cheaper ukuleles where the frets were sort of poking out of the neck. Even when it gets really dry here in the winter, and on my really expensive ukuleles, I still get this problem where the frets can sometimes poke out the sides of the neck as the wood itself kind of shrinks a little bit. And if you come down on one of those frets, if you don't quite get the finger in the right place, wham, that hits your finger and it can cut you, you can bleed. I mean, if you're a nail biter and you have the sort of the quick of the nail exposed, yeah, it's going to be very painful. And over the years, teachers have looked at this and sort of said, okay, well, what's our alternative if that finger strum just doesn't seem to be the right fit for a student? And we have started to use a lot more of the thumb strum, the thumb brush strum, right? Just the fleshy part of the thumb. And I have come to really love the gentle quality of this thumb brush. Partly because when you're teaching individual notes, even if you're just getting them to tune the ukulele, most people tune their ukulele by plucking with the thumb one string at a time. And really, that's melody. You are playing melodies right off the bat. Even if it's just, my dog has fleas, you're playing real melodies. I mean, if you rearrange those very same notes of my dog has fleas, you get right? I mean, there are lots of melodies that you can play with just my dog has fleas. And then when you go to strum, it makes sense that you take that thumb motion and you carry it forward into your strumming. Instead of plucking a single string, we'll just brush across all the strings. What a beautiful sound, right? As opposed to reinventing the motion of the hand with the index finger. The other thing about the thumb is that you're not going to hurt yourself on those frets that are poking out. Even if you kind of misjudge the distance, yeah, the thumb is very forgiving. It's very soft and gives you that that beautiful warm tone. You can really hear the warmth of the ukulele. And what a nice introduction to the tone that we're trying to get students to internalize and strive for. So for all those reasons, in your own playing, but also in your teaching, consider the benefits of that thumb strum. I wrote a book a few years ago called Duets for One. Duets for One is a very advanced set of arrangements where, you know, all of that is with the thumb. You know, a single digit on one hand is giving you these multiple voices, even the melody voice, that it's independent of the rhythm of the accompaniment voice. You know, if you were hearing that without seeing it, you might think that, you know, I'm playing with all the fingers. It's just the thumb. So I think we sometimes underestimate what the thumb can bring in terms of tone and even complexity. So all the more reason to see this as a real viable alternative for, you know, beginners, whether you're learning on your own or with a teacher. I love, you know, strumming with the thumb. Sometimes we just need permission that, like, hey, it's okay. If you want to use the thumb to strum and brush and get that beautiful tone, that's okay. My dad learned how to strum down and up with his thumb, and that was his typical way of playing. That was the first strum I ever saw anybody do, was this down and up motion with the thumb. And, you know, he made it work. It sounded great. It was his favorite way of playing. So all that to say, the ukulele is such a young instrument. Everything is still on the table, and when it comes to strumming in particular, it seems like the rules are getting rewritten all the time. But when we look at what's right for beginners, I would definitely add the thumb strum to your bag of tricks, because not only does it solve some problems at the beginner level, but it also leads us on to some really interesting and beautiful possibilities as students get to more advanced arrangements. So those are my thoughts on that. Thanks for the shout outs in the chat on Duets for One. Aline is saying, great book, love that. Thank you. Yeah, and there's, oh my goodness, we could do a whole, Mike is talking about some of the triple strums that are out there. I mean, we could do a whole session just on the triple strum. I love this. He's also talking about the Metallica strum, down, 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 down all day long. That's a great one. I also love the Metallica strum, and I use it sometimes. In fact, I used it, where did I use it? On this Coldplay song that I arranged for Duets for One, and I'm doing it all, at least the way I play it now, I'm doing it all with the Metallica strum. That kind of thing. Oh, always sounds better when you're in tune. But the idea of down, 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 which I always thought is like thought it was the punk rock strum, you know, all downs in a row. So anyway, those are my thoughts on beginner strums, alternatives for beginner strums, and how they can really take you places. So, yeah. Joe says, I'm working on a Foo Fighters song that that has that kind of a vibe to it, so that's great. Well, guys, this is always a pleasure to see you here. Thank you for joining me. Some of these segments on this from this chat might become episodes for the Uketropolis podcast. I would love to do this again next month. I would love to make it more like a potluck, where you bring a dish in the form of a question. So like, I love going back in the archives of what's been happening on Uketropolis, but I also love just answering questions on the fly here. If you remember last time we got together, we had no plan, and it was just questions, and we ended up learning an arrangement together of Moonglow. So like, fun things happen when we don't plan. And since planning is my kryptonite, that works well for me. So next time, let's do even more questions in the chat and make it even more interactive. So come in with something that you're wondering about, or you think I might be able to help with, and I'd love to dig in more on your own questions in the moment. So yeah. Thanks again for being here. Thanks everybody for jumping into the chat. Thank you to Sayara for being here to moderate. You're a really unruly bunch, so Sayara, thank you. Just kidding. Why is it that ukulele people tend to be just so kind-hearted? I don't know. Something about the instrument that draws people to it, who are kind-hearted and who love community. So thank you for being part of this community, and I'll see you between now and the next time. I'll see you over on Uketropolis. Come by, hang out, take a course, take a free lesson, whatever you like. Uketropolis.com, and I'll see you there. Bye for now, everybody. Keep on strumming. See you later.